So you ready for me to start? Okay. Thank you, Josh. I want to welcome everyone. It's June 23rd, 2020, and I want to welcome you to the third reading, which is also the final public hearing for the 2020-2021 General Fund Operating Budget. We're going to do it live and virtually, so bear with us. We've got a lot of technology going on, so we hope it's all going to work. At this time, do I hear a motion to conclude executive session and begin the 2020-2021 General Fund Budget hearing?
So moved.
Thank you, Dr. Powers. Do I have a second? Thank you, Ms. Green. Are there any questions or comments, Board? Hearing none, we'll take a vote. All in favor of beginning the public hearing, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries, and it is unanimous. We are officially calling this hearing to order, and I would like to remind you that we are in compliance with the governor's orders and CDC recommendations. The auditorium has been thoroughly cleaned and sanitized before the meeting and will be after the meeting also. District staff will also sanitize the microphone before and after staff presentations or individuals speaking during citizens' participation. All board members, employees, and other individuals in attendance are encouraged to social distance and to wear a mask at all times. There is limited seating tonight. Once all the seats in here are full, and I think we still have 3 if anyone else wants to join us, attendees are asked to go to the staff development room, which is also called the overflow room, where we will have a live feed where they can watch the meeting while observing social distancing guidelines. The public is encouraged to watch the meeting on our YouTube channel. After the meeting, the district will follow its previously established process by posting a video of the meeting to the district's YouTube channel, Lexington One video site, and our own website. I would like to remind you that the district is in compliance with the South Carolina Freedom of Information Act. We have notified the media of the date, time, and place of this hearing. The district tapes this hearing for accuracy in preparing the minutes. At this time, I would like to call on Dr. Powers to lead us in our invocation and our Pledge of Allegiance. Dr. Powers?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think, there's a lot of uncertainty these days, which leads to a lot of unrest. And so I searched for a prayer of peace. So I found this, a lot of you have heard it, it's the St. Francis of UCC. I always say that wrong. It's prayer, and I've modified it a little bit for Lexington One. So let's bow our heads. Lord, make me an instrument of your peace. Where there is hatred, let me sow charity. Where there is injury, pardon. Where there is error, truth. Where there is doubt, faith. Where there is despair, hope. Where there is darkness, light. And where there is sadness, joy. O Lord, grant that I may not so much seek to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love. For it is in giving that we receive. It is in pardoning that we are pardoned. And it is dying to our self-interest that we can serve this community of learners. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Dr. Powers.
Stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Dr. Powers. At this time, we're going to go to agenda item 5.0, which is the third and final reading for our 2020-2021 proposed general fund budget. And Mr. Salters, who's our Chief Financial Officer, will present that budget reading. He's going to do it virtually. He's in on a conference call. So, Mr. Salters, I'm going to turn it over to you, but I would like to remind everyone that we do have members from finance with us tonight. And so would y'all raise your hands if you, and all the finance people are here. So we've got backup in the room. So, okay, Mr. Salters, you ready?
Yes, Madam Chair, I am. Can you hear me okay?
Okay, now try it again. Let's see. Say something.
Okay, can you hear me okay now?
Is that, okay, it's not. If it echoes, let us know. Okay, go ahead, Mr. Salters.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay, perfect. All right, well, thank you for indulging me this evening in truly social distance presentation of the third reading. I do apologize for not being able to be there in person. However, I am actually under quarantine with my family right now, and so we'll just leave it at that. So I'm going to go ahead and get started with the presentation. As mentioned, this is the third reading of the budget, and we would be seeking action this evening later on in the meeting on this budget. We just start with a quick reminder. The general fund budget is used for operating expenditures. It's basically the roadmap for the district's revenues and how those revenues are going to be expended to conduct the day-to-day operations of the school district. Conversely, we have capital funds that you may hear about from time to time, and those funds are funds that are restricted by law and bond covenants and are designated really for major building programs, technology, renovations, other items such as buses, library books, band instruments, and things like that are also used for capital funding. But they are not typically used for the day-to-day operations of the school district. And I wanted to take just a minute to talk to you about our capital funding. We just this past week were able to conduct the refunding that you voted on a few months ago. The bond market came back to say a little bit, and it became favorable again for us to move forward with that refunding. And we were able to go through our ratings with Moody's and Standard & Poor's, the two rating agencies. And you see on the screen there, our ratings were affirmed again by both rating agencies. And I just highlighted a couple of quotes from Moody's, exactly the mitigation strategies they're looking for during this time to maintain a strong financial performance. And then S&P demonstrated strong financial performance resulting in a long track record of strength and stability. Couldn't ask for anything more out of a government entity. So those are obviously the two most popular rating agencies in the United States. And for those to recognize the performance that the district has maintained over many years is a testament to the board and the stability of our finances. So I just wanted to highlight that as part of what we're doing. And I would add, as part of the refunding, that we were able to, going through that, we're actually originally estimated to save roughly $7 to $8 million. And actually, we actually ended up saving $12.6 million. The net present value of the savings is $12.6 million. So that's a significant amount of funding or savings, I should say, to our taxpayers over the course of those bonds that were refunded. So, you couple that with the recent bond sale that we did, where we got a roughly $15 million premium payment to us. That's 27 million and some change just in this year that the district has seen in savings and also premium as a result of stable budget and stable financial position. So that's just kind of a good shout out for you, the board, for overseeing that. So moving on to our budget, some considerations that we're looking at in this budget process. Obviously, this is a very different time frame than we've dealt with in years past. We do anticipate some funding shortfalls in this fiscal year. The General Assembly passed a continuing resolution to fund us at the same level next year as we are this year, at least, to start the year. But we don't know what other shortfalls may come about. They're scheduled to get back together on the 15th of September to look at the general appropriations bill going forward. So We're obviously continuing to monitor the economy and any other further actions that the General Assembly is looking at. Along with that, the Board of Economic Advisors were following their work and predictions, and we will likely have to do a budget amendment at some point after a general appropriations bill is passed this fall with the General Assembly. And some additional considerations, our proposed budget really focuses on quality education and support for our students and staff. That's what the district has come to be known for. Currently, there is no salary or step increase included at this time. That's related to a couple factors. One is the uncertainty of the state funding, but the other is the continuing resolution. I'll speak more on that in a minute. The proposed budget is designed to provide for student growth and meet state and federal requirements. And then we do have some inflationary costs that we have to meet within this budget. Obviously, some priorities for us this year are to open Centerville Elementary School, and part of that opening is to restructure Gilbert Elementary and Gilbert Primary Schools. We'll also be relocating Peoria Middle School, and excited about opening the College Center at Gilbert High School. And then, we're preparing for the impact of COVID-19 and the many unknowns associated with that. Just taking a look at our average daily membership and our growth, historical growth, you can see right now we're projecting some 527 students in growth. This will be an interesting number to watch this year, and I know that later this evening we're going to be talking about some different options for what the start of school may look like, but we right now are looking at some additional growth coming into our community. So we will be watching that very closely. The 27034 number there is a projection, and it does not include our 3 and 4 year olds. And last year we had 847 of those students. So we're approaching 28,000 should the growth occur as we would expect. Speaking back to salaries briefly, as I mentioned, currently there's no step or salary increase for any employees in the proposed budget. Obviously, the district feels employees deserve a raise, and so or a step increase, a year of experience step increase. At this time, the district is legally restricted from providing that step increase for teachers, and that's in Part 2, Section 4D of the Act 135, which is that continuing resolution. And so we don't feel it's prudent to move forward with other raises for other employees until we see what the General Assembly is going to do for teachers in the fall. Couple that with the uncertainty of the economic impact of COVID-19. We feel like we need to kind of see where things are going and then what the General Assembly does. When the state passes, General Appropriations Act in the fall, we certainly will move quickly to amend the district's budget to incorporate any raises that might be associated with that act. And, we do anticipate that those raises would be, for the contract year for employees. So it would be retroactive should it occur later in the fall than when teachers come back and start. Taking a look at our general fund staffing, and this is kind of an overall net out of our staffing changes. I mentioned we're looking at 527 new students potentially, but we are only looking at an overall net change of 15 and a half staff members. This has not changed since first reading. And you'll notice that at the elementary level, we have actually reduced 6 FTE. That's being accomplished by increasing ratios by 1 at kindergarten, first and second grade to 23 to 1. And so, of course, those staffing ratios and numbers will have different meanings as we go to open school and talk further about that later this evening. But, that's how we're budgeting at this point. And if you come on down, you'll see, positions for our special needs students and the 9 staff members there for support staff for special needs are instructional assistants, and those are transfers. Actually, they're not new positions. They're in they're in the district now, but they were funded by IDEA, and that funding is continuing to decrease, and so those 9 positions are having to be transferred to the general fund, and so we're picking those up. That IDEA, one of the questions came back recently from one of the board members regarding that funding. We're supposed to be funded at 40% by the federal government, and we're actually funded only at about 14% for IDEA. And so, again, 15.5 FTE there. Ms. Garris asked for, at our second reading, a breakdown of our Gilbert and Centerville FTE, and so this is a display of that. It shows, the current fiscal year at the top and how those FTE are broken out, and then the upcoming fiscal year where we'll have Gilbert Elementary School and then Centerville Elementary School, and the breakdown of the FTE to open or reconfigure those 2 facilities. And looking at our increases in programs and services, I mentioned some impacts of COVID-19. The unemployment compensation is one of those impacts. We anticipate we are a reimbursable employer to the South Carolina unemployment system, and so we will be invoiced for basically unemployment claims, and we have seen an increase in those during this time, and we've projected that out through the end of the year and anticipate this liability growing to this point. We do, I will tell you, this amount of money is being included in our CARES Act funding request, and so it's very possible that that will be reimbursed through CARES Act funding if that plan is approved. We've got some increases for safety and security. We were funded for some additional SROs through the State Department of Education this year, and we have to provide equipment, the fringe cost of their benefits, not the salary. They only cover salary. And then we also have factored in a 3% salary increase for the county, which they are in their budget conversations as well. In fact, I believe they may have their last reading this evening on their budget, but we have to plan for increased costs associated with those SROs. Employee Assistance Program is a very important program that our Human Resource Division has sought bids for and identified a vendor to move forward with. This will really help on that social, emotional, and cultural well-being of our staff. You'll find that large districts like ours all offer this. It's a very good benefit for our employees and really reduces, turnover, workplace incidents of absenteeism, things like that, because it really gives them, an out and someone to talk to. So we're really interested in moving forward with that. That additionally qualifies for CARES Act funding, and so we have incorporated that into our CARES Act plan for potential reimbursement as well. Workers' compensation premiums, this is one of those inflationary costs. It's based on your risk, and so that number is given directly as a premium increase. Some decreases in programs and services. I'll tell you that we've worked really hard. I really appreciate our senior leadership team, our principals, and departments, directors in our departments, really working hard to identify some cuts this year. I mentioned in first and second reading, we've taken a really hard look, account by account, using budget actual numbers, and going through and identifying areas where we may have had some funding that was unspent last year. We've recouped that and reduced that. We've reduced our supplies and maintenance and repairs line items. Of course, we have a referendum out right now that provides for some additions, renovations, and so forth at our school facilities. So we're working with that funding to offset some of this. Cutting travel. We don't anticipate folks traveling a whole lot this fall and on into the year. The Staff Services International Exchange Visitor Program. This is our program that our Human Resource Division uses to onboard our international teachers. And we're not cutting the program. There was just an amount of money budgeted there that was not, we weren't using that much money, and so we've cut that back to align it with the expenditures. And so that brings your total decreases to that 1.609 million. Now in this slide is where you'll recognize your only change from third reading, and it is an increase to a decrease, which I know sounds a little confusing, but that's a good thing. We were able to renegotiate a contract in our IT division, and so the technology supplies and services line item actually increased by $90,000, which is an overall decrease to the budget. So we're pleased about that. Moving on to our school fees, we've had some conversations about this in our previous two readings, and we have continued to recommend these fee reductions. And so we, again, looking at our $6 kindergarten consumable fee being eliminated, the $28 grade 1 through 5 fee reduced to $20. And then at the high school level, the $5 consumable fee being eliminated, the $5 language arts parallel reading fee eliminated, and then the $25 parking fee being reduced to $5. And as you recall, this is, as I mentioned in previous readings, this is a kind of a systematic approach that we've taken over the past few years under Dr. Little's leadership. We started with the elementary supply list, trying to reduce the overall impact of our attending our schools to our families, and then we moved to the middle school, some middle school fee reductions this past year, and now we've targeted some elementary and high school fees this year. We continue to look at those, and we'll continue to look at those. It's our goal to make sure that fees collected are used for the stated purpose and for the amount that's needed, and that our schools are maintaining a good control over that aspect of their budgets. The school paid meal prices, I mentioned this in second reading. We were handed this information from the USDA. and so that's representing a 10-cent increase on each of those meals. The reduced meal price still stays the same. It is not impacted by the 10 cents. So that reduced meal price is 30 cents for breakfast and 40 cents for lunch. But that information is given to us by the USDA. So just moving on to our projected revenue, the only change that you see here from second to third reading, we have reduced the operational balance by $90,000. We by renegotiating that contract, we will not need that $90,000 in revenue, obviously now, and so we reduced the use of operational balance by that $90,000. But overall, I would just call your attention to the projected decrease in the budget, and by $8 million. We talked in the previous readings about some different strategies we're using for budgeting. One of those strategies being our salary and our fill rate on our salaries. We had in the past been budgeting at 100% fill rate, and reality is the highest fill rate we've seen in the last really 5 to 7 years is about a 98% fill rate. And so we are looking at this year's budget, including a 98% fill rate as our base, and so that generates some savings on salary, and that's a big chunk of that on the expenditure side. So just want to point some of that out. We have talked with the county. In fact, I heard a statement this evening regarding the county's budget that they do not anticipate any major revenue shortfalls in their local tax revenue. So that's good news for us, and we'll continue to monitor that. Our revenues are aligned with the actual received revenues this year that we have, and so again, you see the $8 million reduction there. And the expenditure side, as I mentioned, we've gone through and really targeted all the accounts, gone through and looked at each department, and our schools have done really good work looking at their budgets. And so we are right now proposing an approximately $8 million decrease in the budget. Certainly, General Appropriations Act comes out and gives teachers a step. That money would change that overall expenditure column a good bit, but we would hope that some of the associated revenue would come in to help support that. So looking again at this is kind of a graphic that just shows, that we are a people business, a service business. Our best resource and most our greatest asset is our teaching staff, and that's where the bulk of our funding goes, salaries and related costs. And then you see the smaller percentages there for programs and services, and then our utilities and maintenance cost. Speak briefly about Act 388, the allowable millage increase. We talked about this already in our previous readings. We could generate potentially $3.6 million roughly in additional revenue by levying our allowable millage. And so what you notice that we are recommending in this budget, we continue to recommend 0 mills on the operational side for an increase. And that's primarily because we feel strongly that our families and our communities and our businesses have all been impacted by the COVID-19 virus. And so it's not only important to focus on mental health and wealth, but it's important to focus on economic health and wealth. And so we feel like preserving that 0 millage increase will help our local businesses in the best way we can reach out to them. So, just in summary, the revenue projections, as I said earlier, will remain at the same level right now as they are this year. Our local revenue projections have declined, and some due to the economic climate, but more. It's actually more about the actual collections that we've taken in. The budgeted revenue this past year was just higher than what we've actually taken in this year, and so we've adjusted those budget figures to more closely align with that revenue income stream. We are including funding to meet our federal and state mandates and our inflationary costs. We do have funding included to restructure and relocate the identified schools in the building program. And as I said, no millage increase on our operational budget. And just, again, reiterate that a budget amendment will be likely this fall due to, passage of a general appropriations bill by the General Assembly. So, Madam Chair, with that, that is our third reading proposal, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have at this time.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Salters. We appreciate that third reading, and we appreciate you adjusting as we moved along in this process, and we look forward to hearing what the legislature determines in the fall when they reconvene. Board, you've now heard the third reading. Tonight is the night we will vote on this budget. We will be voting during our general session, which follows this public hearing. But at this time, do you have any questions or comments you'd like to ask Mr. Salters or the finance team?
Mr. Salters, this is Anne-Marie Green. Thank you for the presentation. And I know that this budget reflects a lot of belt tightening. And I appreciate all that you and your staff have done to kind of prepare us for the current situation. And I'm not trying to ask you to predict the future, but have you already anticipating that possibly the Appropriations Act that the General Assembly passes in September could impact us negatively? Has your team started projecting where additional belt tightening can take place?
Well,
Should
that's a
that
great
be
point.
necessary?
Well, that's a great point, and you're correct. The General Assembly, should they fund, a step for teachers as an example, or some form of that, they will likely not provide all of the funding associated with that, because they usually fund at the state minimum salary schedule, and our district funds a percentage above that, and so we will have a local match to have to come up with to provide that step increase. And so we certainly are looking at ways to meet that match. And different options that we've got. Obviously, one of the ways to accomplish that in a given year is to use some of your operational balance to make up that gap for a year, and then revisit it in your budget process as you go through the next year. There are other ways, to cut additional, services or programs that are out there. And so we'll be looking at those adjustments as we go. I'll tell you that we, really every day we're monitoring the changes that are coming about with the way that we may open school and what that looks like, and associated costs and staffing needs. And so really we're monitoring it literally every day, because there's something changing every day. So we will continue to prepare for that and have conversations with you guys as we move forward, so that you have plenty of understanding and notice of your different options, should we have to meet some, matching of that.
Well, and I mean, I think a very good example of a good thing with an unintended consequence is the funding for the additional SROs and safety personnel and the cost that we incur for, the General Assembly is really good at the headlines. There's more money for SRO and security, but the district has to pick up the equipment and the vehicles and the fringe benefits. And so the actual cost for some things is usually not funded in full. Is that accurate?
That is very accurate. Yes.
And even our existing SROs, this is Cindy, even the existing SROs, what percent does the sheriff's department and the town police departments, what percent do they pay of their current salaries, the ones we already have on our books?
Yeah, it's like 75-25, and
so
some cases
we
80-20,
pay 75
something like that.
and they
so,
pay 25, right?
Yeah, that's correct. That's correct. And then we typically provide the equipment, and the equipment including the car and the officer equipment that they wear and use.
We appreciate them. It's just that I want people to understand that they're not employees that are just given to us with no strings. They all come with strings in order to maintain that position. Board members, any other questions or comments for Mr. Salters before we open it up for public comment?
Yeah, Mr. Salters, I have a question. They were just talking about SROs, and we provide their vehicle equipment. Was that a decision made here locally? Because I don't believe that all districts provide these same things for their SROs.
They don't.
The contracts for those SROs were negotiated with the different agencies that provide them, and so that's a local. It's a local county, if you will, negotiation. With our sheriff's department, and the county council oversees that, and then with our town municipalities, the town of Pelion and the town of Lexington, those different municipalities, and we actually have slightly different arrangements with each one, but those are negotiated locally.
Okay, thank you. Your page 12, which is my old page 9, you mentioned you have incorporated some of these into our CARES Act plan for the potential reimbursement. How much have you asked for reimbursement through the CARES Act?
So our CARES Act funding that we potentially can receive is roughly about $3 million. And so the two items that I showed on the screen here are two of the potential reimbursements that we're looking at incorporating into that plan. And there's about 12 different categories of expenditures that either future expenditures or past expenditures going back to March that could qualify.
Thank you. You also said the district is legally restricted from providing step increases for teachers at this time. Do you have that specific language out of those that you quoted?
Yeah, it's let me get to that page here. Hang on one second. The state minimum is Part 2, Section 4D states the state teacher minimum salary schedule will remain at the fiscal year 19-20 funding level. Step increases are suspended until the annual General Appropriations Act for fiscal year 2020-21 is enacted.
Okay. I interpret that to mean that the state is suspending those, but the state schedule is a minimum and state funding is only part of the teacher salaries. I don't interpret that to mean that we are restricted from providing step increases. I mean, does anyone else interpret that a different way?
I'm just going off of the information we have been
Yeah, I was
presented by
asking the
State
board.
Department.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. Thank you for that. Yeah, I'm just wondering, I was looking at the board, you're not here, so you
Okay.
couldn't see.
Sorry.
Mr. Salters, I guess kind of in line with that question, if there is a legal restriction there and, you know, let's paint the brightest possible future and say things actually look pretty good from a financial perspective, do we have any sort of history of a bonus type situation with staff or teachers that even if we couldn't provide a step increase but found ourselves financially in a good place at the end of the year, that we have done that in the past?
Dr. Guyton, you know, I've been here going on 25 years, and I have not, in my 25 years, we have not given employees any kind of bonus or additional stipend that was not related to, you know, a board policy leave buyout of some kind or leave payment. That has not been done.
Thank you.
And my only comment is, I want to thank y'all in fiscal affairs working through this. No one can predict the future, but I think the acceleration of technology and our ability to facilitate our daily needs as well as our work through technology is not going to go away, even with hopefully COVID abates, which means more people are going to be working out of their homes, which means less commercial business sites. It means more people are going to be ordering from firms that are not local, that are national. So I'm really concerned that our tax base here in this county is going to shrink. And then I'm nervous, and I think the state's doing a little bit better about collecting sales tax on all the internet revenue, but I'm nervous that sales tax revenue, which again, those are two huge funding sources. So I'm nervous moving forward, you know, 3, 5, 7, 10 years from now about a sustainable funding model. So I think this is the first year of many that we're going to have to be very diligent about any potential increases, because I don't think that tax base is coming back. So, but I may be wrong, and I hope I'm wrong.
Board, any other questions or comments for Mr. Salters? Okay, hearing none at this point. Thank you, Mr. Salters. We're going to go to citizens' public comment on the budget. And let me remind the people who are here, this particular portion of public comment is only regarding the public hearing for the budget. If you want to comment on anything else, that will be during our general session, which will follow this session. So this is only for the budget. I do have a card, so I am going to read the guidelines. So the Lexington County School District 1 Board of Trustees provides a time for citizens' participation during the public hearing on the general fund budget. There are a few guidelines, of course. First, in order to speak, you must be a parent or legal guardian of a student in Lexington County School District 1 or a resident and a taxpayer of the district. Second, each speaker will have 3 minutes. Third, you may comment on the 2020-2021 proposed general fund budget. However, you may not speak about specific individuals, whether students or staff. There are other ways to bring situations like that to the board's attention. We want to give everyone who came here tonight a chance to speak, so board members will not reply to your individual remarks. And if someone makes the point or points you came to make before you, if you could just state that you agree with the previous speakers and not restate every point, that would help us move along. We also ask that you not clap or make any comments either while an individual is speaking or after a speaker finishes, as that also slows down the process considerably. If you wanted to speak tonight, we ask you to fill out a card that gave us your name and address for our records. Those cards were in the sign-in table as you came into the meeting. If you have not filled out a card and wish to speak to us about the budget, only the budget, just want to remind you, hold up your hand and Ms. Hill will provide a card for you this time. Do I have anyone else who wants to speak that has not provided a card? Okay, we'll go to the card then. I'd like to invite Ms. Chelsea Snellgrove to the, back to the monitor in the back. She lives at 344 Kaiser Road, Lexington, South Carolina, and she has a student at Red Bank Elementary, and she's going to talk about the budget. Ms. Snellgrove?
Thank you. I know times are tough, but just hear me out. I have something to say about the budget. It might not concern the general budget specifically, but here goes. I believe we can all agree that kids deserve equal education regardless of socioeconomic status or race. With that said, it is obvious to me that in Lexington School District 1, equal opportunities do not exist for all students. I've looked on in awe of the plans for the new Centerville Elementary School and found the comparison to my son's elementary school, the same one that I attended over 25 years ago, shockingly unequal. Students at the new Centerville will be given opportunities in several clubs that are not offered at my son's school and will have access to state-of-the-art technologies also not available at my son's school. Although disparities in student opportunities are seen across the board, these inequities are most evident in our elementary schools. Using data collated from the National Center for Educational Statistics and Lexington One's 2019 CFAR, I've noticed an alarming trend in the pupil activity funds. In general, schools with higher numbers of minorities and impoverished students disperse significantly less money towards student activity expenditures. For example, Saxagatha Elementary has approximately 35% minority students and 56% students on free or reduced lunch programs. Their approximate spending per pupil on activity expenditures is $99. By contrast, Midway Elementary has approximately 7% minority students and 8% students on free or reduced lunch. Meanwhile, their approximate spending per pupil on activity expenditures is $281, almost triple that of Saxagatha. White Knoll Middle, which has approximately 40% minority students and 53% students on free or reduced lunch, spends a paltry $235 per pupil on activity expenditures, while Pleasant Hill Middle has about 19% minority students and 14% students on free and reduced lunch and spends roughly $525 per pupil on activity expenditures, more than double that of White Knoll Middle. These are just a few examples which highlight the inequities that marginalized students in our district face. With that said, I'm calling on the school board to address these issues and actively work to create equal opportunities for students and look for ways to create equity through the budget.
Thank you, Ms. Snellgrove. We appreciate that. Anyone
you.
else wishing to address the board regarding the budget? Okay, at this time, we are going to adjourn the public hearing of the 2020-2021 proposed general fund operating budget. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Powers. Do I have a second? Thank you, Ms. Green. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries, and we are now adjourned. We will take, let's see, it's 6 minutes till 8. We'll take 6 minutes, and we'll be reconvened back at 8 o'clock. Thank you.
But we're just getting started, so stay.
Jeff, thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. I'm going to be here.
I think we're about ready to get started, and let me get my technology guru back there, Mr. Josh. How are we looking, Josh? Are we ready to go? Okay, we got a thumbs up. That's always a good sign in today's age. So, again, it is June 23rd, 2020, and I want to welcome all of you to our main June meeting. We have a full agenda tonight. We've already had our budget hearing, which we will vote on shortly. And then now we're going to go into our regular general session. And so do I hear a motion to call to order the June 23rd, 2020 Board General Session?
Madam Chair, I move that the board begin the general session of the June 23rd, 2020 board meeting.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Green. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Powers. Are there any questions or comments, board? Hearing none, we'll take a vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries, and it is unanimous. We are meeting tonight in compliance with the governor's orders and CDC recommendations. The auditorium has been thoroughly cleaned and sanitized before this meeting, and it will be after the meeting as well. District staff will also sanitize the microphone before and after staff presentations or individuals speaking during citizens' participation. All board members, employees, or other individuals in attendance are encouraged to social distance and to wear a mask at all times. And you guys are doing good. Everybody's got on a mask. Thank you for doing that. There is limited seating. Once this room is filled, attendees are asked to go to the staff development room or overflow room, which is at the end of the hall, where we are having a live feed and you can watch the meeting and observe social distancing guidelines. The public is encouraged to watch the meeting on our YouTube channel. After the meeting, the district will follow its previously established process by posting a video of the meeting to the district's YouTube channel, Lex One video site, and our own website. I would like to let you know that we are in compliance with the South Carolina Freedom of Information Act, and we have notified the media of the date, time, and place of this meeting. And Ms. Hill, do we have any media here? No. I also would like to let you know that the district does tape this meeting for accuracy in preparing the minutes. Board, in front of you, you have an agenda. Do I hear a motion to approve the agenda as presented for the general session?
So moved.
Thank you, Dr. Powers. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Green. Are there any questions or comments regarding the agenda? Hearing none, we'll take a vote. All in favor of the agenda as presented, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries, and it is unanimous. We're going to go to 10.0, which is the approval of the minutes of the May 5th, 2020 and the May 19th, 2020 board meetings. Board members, you received the minutes of the May 5th, 2020 and the May 19th, 2020 board meetings. Other than corrections that have already been received and made, are there any other corrections? Hearing none, the minutes will be accepted as presented, and if I could brag on Ms. Tracy Halliday, who has been trained by Ms. Cheryl Layton this week. She did those by herself, so let's give her a round of applause. A lot goes into doing that. Okay, now 11.0, reports and action items from executive session. Do I hear a motion to approve 18 certified recommendations for the 2020-2021 school year?
Madam Chair, I move the board accept Dr. Little and senior leadership team's recommendation for 18 certified positions for the 2020-21 school year.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Powers. Do I have a second? Thank you, Ms. Green. At this time, I'd like, let's see, Mr. Stacy, do you have access to a mic? Well, just, I was going to see if there were any comments that you had about how many positions we have. You can tell me and I'll be glad to. How many positions do we have left to fill that we're still working on? Okay, we have 24 open positions and 1 administrative position. I think that's incredible. Let's give HR a round of applause because they've done a great job. They've done a lot of virtual interviews, and you haven't lived till you sat through a virtual interview, right, Mr. Stacy? So we now have a motion and a second on the floor. Are there any questions or comments, board, before we take a vote? Hearing none, we'll take a vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries, and it is unanimous. Do I hear a motion to approve 1 administrative recommendation for the 2020-2021 school year?
Madam Chair, I move the board accept the 1 administrative position recommendation by Dr. Little and the senior leadership team for the 2020-2021 school year.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Powers. Do we have a second? Second. Okay, thank you, Ms. Green. Are there any questions or comments regarding that 1 position? Hearing none, we'll take a vote. All in favor of approving the one administrative recommendation, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries, and it is unanimous. The board did hear some information from our law firm regarding some potential litigation. Do I hear a motion to retain a legal firm to represent the district as plaintiff party in the multi-district legal action against Juul Labs concerning the vaping epidemic in our schools?
Madam Chair, I move that the board retain the firm of Wagstaff and Cartmel to represent the district as a plaintiff party in the multi-district legal action established in the federal court in California against e-cigarette maker Juul Labs concerning what has become a vaping epidemic with our youth and in our schools.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Green. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Are there any questions or comments regarding this potential litigation, board? Hearing none, we'll take a vote. All in favor of retaining the legal firm to represent our district as a plaintiff in this multi-district legal action, please say aye.
Aye.
Is there anyone opposed?
I'm opposed.
Okay, one opposed, okay. The motion carries at 6-1 and the motion does carry, and we are now entering into that litigation. And I would like to let you know that Fort Mill has already voted to go into join this litigation. So I'm not sure if any other districts in the state, but we'll be joining Fort Mill. We just feel like, I think Ms. Rawls shared with me, it's just an absolute epidemic. And anything we can do to help our students, we really want to do that. So at this time, we're going to go to 12.0, which is special recognition. And let me move over here. And I would like to ask Dr. Little to step forward. And if you've been to any recent board meetings, you know we have not done this in a while, so this is really special. Usually when principals retire, schools host drop-ins in their honor, and we recognize them at district leadership team meetings with a special gift and lots of memories. In this unusual time, however, when we cannot gather in large groups, we celebrate their successes in different ways. Principals share their memories and messages in online groups and Zoom meetings, and tonight, while masked and practicing social distancing, we recognize them. Together, principals Brenda Nichols, and if you'll come forward as I call your name, Melissa Rawl. Yeah. So we're going to recognize Miss Brenda Nichols first. Well, I tell you what, I'm going to read this part, so stand there. Okay, we're going to recognize Brenda Nichols, Melissa Rawl, and Guy Smith, who have contributed more than 111 years of service to Lexington One. Okay, I'm going to read about Brenda, so let's see if we can make her blush. Brenda Nichols joined Rocky Creek Elementary when it opened in 2010, first as assistant principal, then she became principal in 2014. She has a very strong work ethic with high expectations of herself and her staff, and is passionate about coding, providing quality learning opportunities for staff, and ensuring that all Rocky Creek students are prepared for the world of college and careers. She began her career as an elementary school counselor at Red Cliff Elementary in the Aiken County Public School District in 1990. She joined Lexington District 1 in 1993 as a fourth grade teacher at White Knoll Elementary. In 1999, she transferred to Lake Murray Elementary when it opened. Then she was promoted to assistant principal at Lake Murray Elementary in 2005, and she also served as a literacy coach. Brenda, we cannot thank you enough for your service, and I'm sad to see you move on, but I know it's going to be exciting. So let's stand up and let's recognize Ms. Brenda Nichols. I'm going to embarrass her a little more. I think you have some family members here, right? No. Oh, you're by yourself. Oh, I know Melissa has some family members.
Ms. Smith?
I saw her half back there.
Ms. Smith, I'd just like to add that Miss Nichols and I used to walk to Girl Scouts together in elementary school, and I have to say that she is not old enough to retire because we're the same age, and so I'm just going to say that right now. So,
Now we're going to recognize Miss Melissa Rawl, a graduate of Lexington High School, and so she has come full circle. She is a quiet, calm leader who began her teaching career in 1978 at Brooklyn Casey High School in Lexington II after graduating magna cum laude from the University of South Carolina. She moved to Airport High School in 1979 as a teacher and department chair and joined our district at Gilbert High School in 1997, serving again as teacher and department chair. In 1998, she moved to Lexington High. She came home, where she served as teacher and the district's secondary summer school coordinator before becoming an assistant principal in 2001, then principal in 2011. Her career is studded with awards. The 2018 South Carolina Athletic Administrators Association 5A Principal of the Year, the 2017 Lexington Rotary Club Lee Bullington Spirit Award, the 2014 Palmetto Center for Women Twin Award, the 2008 SCASA South Carolina Secondary Assistant Principal of the Year, the 2004 Army National Guard Recognition of Support, the 2000 Lexington High Teacher of the Year finalist, the 1994 Barbara H. James Award for Academic Teacher of the Year for outstanding contributions to and support of tech prep, and the 1990 Airport High School Teacher of the Year. I think y'all will join me in saying we will really miss Melissa, but we wish her the best. And your family's here. You want to say who's here with you?
My very supportive husband is here, and my lovely daughter Anna, her husband Alan.
Oh, we're glad y'all came. And I know you're going to enjoy having more time with your mom. So thank you, Melissa.
Was that 41 years in public education? Is that 42?
Wow. Okay. A veteran educator, a graduate of Pillion High, and magna cum laude graduate of the University of South Carolina, Guy Smith's commitment to students is eclipsed only by his commitment to his staff. He began his education career in 1979 as a social studies teacher at Richland Northeast High School in Richland School District 2, and joined Lexington District 1 in 1981 as a social studies teacher at Pillion High School, where he taught social studies, served as department chair, and coached various sports including tennis, junior varsity basketball, and varsity track. He received a promotion to the position of administrative assistant at Pillion Elementary School in 2000, and a year later was promoted to the position of assistant principal at Pillion Middle School. Another promotion in 2012 took him to the position of White Knoll Middle School principal. He believes his time as White Knoll Middle School principal has not just been a great honor, but also a genuine pleasure as he served the students, staff, and parents of the White Knoll community. Guy, we're going to miss you and enjoy your retirement. Thank you.
Ms. Smith, how cool is it that all three of these retiring principals are also products of Lexington One
I
schools?
know. Isn't that great?
That's a rare thing. Thank you for your service to this community.
Okay, we're going to move on. We are now going to recognize someone who is near and dear to me that I could not have served on the board without her help for all these years. Cheryl Layton started working for Lexington School District 1 in 1993. She used a typewriter in the office and relied on carbon paper for making copies in a district that only had 14 schools. She served 4 superintendents in her tenure, including Dr. Chester Floyd, Mr. Joe Bonds, Dr. Karen Woodward, and now Dr. Greg Little. Her favorite part of the job has always been serving people. She takes pride in knowing that what sometimes started as a tense call or meeting with a parent, community member, or employee often later developed into a friendship. And I can honestly say that. I would have people call me and they'd say, oh, I'm just going to hang up with you, and I'm going to call that Miss Layton lady because she's really good. She'll help me. Cheryl looks forward to spending more time with her husband, Charles, her 4 children, and 7 grandchildren who live in various parts of the country. And there they are. And one of her daughters even flew in from Ohio. Oh, good. And we welcome her son via Facebook. She is also expanding her self-described she shed so she can do more sewing, crafting, and painting. And she just told me she's going to make me a new mask, so I'm going to count on that. I will tell you that she is our board's right hand. When Mr. Rogers said, look for the helpers, he perfectly described Cheryl. We will miss you, Cheryl. I can't, He wouldn't do this. He said, Miss Smith, you're doing it. Yeah.
I'm thankful for her care and compassion, and that she shows every person who encounters her, even when they do not reciprocate that same care and compassion. She is very much a caring and compassionate person. I'm thankful for that 4 years ago, you wrapped your arms around a new superintendent who was moving his family to a new school. And I know you're going to have a ton of fun, but I want you to know that I am going to miss you terribly.
We all
So,
are.
congratulations.
Cheryl, just introduce your family real quick if you don't mind, because I even see Charles back there.
Yes.
And that's a lot for Charles to drive from Saluda County.
That's my husband, Charles. My eldest daughter, Andrea, she lives in Gilbert, and her children go there. My daughter, Jackie, she came from the Cincinnati area. She's a respiratory therapist, and there's 2 of her children with her. My daughter, Lindsay, and her son, Kingston, and he is going to Lexington Lexington Middle next year. Those are most of my grandchildren. My son is on FaceTime. He's in San Diego cheering us on.
Well, she's got her work cut out for you, a lot to do with that family. So we love you, and thank y'all for sharing her with us. It's been a true pleasure. Okay, let me get my mask back on and get situated. We are now at agenda item 13.0, which is citizens' participation. And, I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. No, Julie, come on up.
You really shouldn't have.
Oh, you go back there. Oh, okay. Well, Greg, you look like Miss America there.
Okay, we'll just make it work. Yeah, that would be better, but.
She's coming. She's going to rescue you.
Okay.
Maybe not.
Thanks for your patience. I am here on behalf of the Lexington One Educational Foundation, and I'm excited to be here to present the actual Joseph M. Biedenbow Administrator of the Year Award. The foundation established this in 2005, and it recognizes each year an effective and a deserving administrator who currently serves in Lexington One, while also honoring an esteemed administrator from the district staff of 1952, who was Mr. Joseph M. Biedenbow. He worked for the district for 36 years as a 7th grade math teacher, a principal, and an assistant superintendent for federal and personnel programs. And he was also a World War II veteran who served in the U.S. Air Force. He retired in 1983, but he remained very active in our district for many years. And we honor him each year when we present this award on behalf of the foundation. And sadly, he passed away last year. His son, Mackie, was unable to join us tonight due to COVID-19, precautions, but he did ask me to share his congratulations with the award winner. So on to the award for this year. The 2020 recipient of the Joseph M. Bedenbaugh Administrator of the Year Award has exhibited outstanding leadership and loyalty to education in Lexington School District 1 for more than 20 years as a teacher, a district coordinator, an assistant principal, and a principal. The individual is passionate and dedicated and builds intentional connections with students, teachers, and staff to empower them to be their very best. The individual exemplifies school spirit and good sportsmanship and truly loves all areas, including academics, athletics, and the arts. The winner has a constant smile, a supportive and encouraging attitude, and celebrates successes and personal growth. The individual is strong, graceful, and kind, and demonstrates leadership both in the school and outside of it and the district. It is for all these reasons and for this person's outstanding commitment to excellence in education that I'm pleased to present the 2020 Joseph M. Bedenbaugh Administrator of the Year Award to Mrs. Melissa C. Rawl, Principal of Lexington High School.
Congratulations, Melissa, on winning this prestigious award. We can think of no one more deserving than you.
Congratulations, Melissa. This award is well deserved.
Congratulations.
Congratulations, Mrs. Roll, on your distinguished award. It is well deserved, and we are very proud of you.
All right, congratulations on winning your award. You definitely deserve it.
Congratulations.
Hi, Ms. Roll. I wanted to congratulate you on getting the Administrator of the Year award. I know that I could not have imagined doing 8 years with any other principal.
Congratulations, Mrs. Rawl.
Hi, Mrs. Rawl. I wanted to congratulate you for winning this award. I just have to tell you, your 3 Ps of positivity, professionalism, and public relations have shaped Lexington High School for a decade and beyond.
Congratulations, Melissa, on winning the Bedenbaugh Award. You're well deserving, and you've done some great things here, and it's just a well-deserved award. Congratulations.
Hey, Ms. Rawl, I just wanted to congratulate you on winning the Bedenbaugh Administrator of the Year Award. I know it's kind of cliche to say it, but there's nobody more deserving.
Congratulations, Melissa, on winning the Joseph Bedenbaugh Award. We are so glad that you are representing Lexington High School and winning this award. Congratulations.
Congratulations, Ms. Rawl. You are so deserving of this award. We are so proud of you. Way to go, Wildcats.
Congratulations, Ms. Rawl, on winning the Joseph Bedenbaugh Award. You are the most deserving person for this award because of how you treat your parents, your students, and your teachers. It has been an honor to work with you, and we will miss you so much next year.
I think we got her good. Congratulations, Melissa. I know.
Ms.
We
Rawl,
love
I'd like to
Melissa.
add too that during the Lexington High School graduation, which was absolutely beautiful, when you did the alma mater, I'm not even a graduate from Lexington 1 and I cried. Thank you so much for all your service.
I agree. And she also has the best shoes of anybody in the district. We always look forward to graduation to see which shoes Melissa's going to wear to graduation because they're always stunning. Well, if anybody would like to leave, I know we're in a transition time, and I know several guests, you might not want to stay for the rest of the meeting, but we're going to move on, so feel free if anybody wants to get up and move around, that we will not penalize you for that. We're now going to go to 13.0, which is citizens participation. I have not received any cards. Would anybody like to address the board? Okay, if you don't mind, it's a long thing. I'm not going to read it if no one's going to address us, so we'll keep moving if everybody's okay with that. So we're now going to go to 14.0, which are action items, and 14.1 is the third reading of the 2020-2021 proposed general fund budget. We just had our public hearing prior to this meeting, and Mr. Salters, our Chief Financial Officer, presented the third reading, which was the final reading, and tonight we will vote whether or not we're going to adopt this budget. So do I hear a motion to approve the 2020-2021 general fund budget as presented?
Madam Chair, I move that the board approve the third reading of the general fund budget for fiscal year 2020-2021 as recommended by the administration.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Oswald. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Powers. Board, are there any questions or comments before we take a vote?
I just have some comments. First, I just want to thank Mr. Salters and your staff again for the hard work that y'all put into this budget. And also, thank you for spending hours outside of this meeting gathering information and answering all of my questions. To the board, I just wanted to say I do not believe that the district is legally restricted from providing step increases. Some districts truly can't make up the difference, but Lexington 1 is not one of those. And if it hadn't been for the School Boards Association and a couple of other organizations asking the General Assembly to suspend step increases, we may not even be having this discussion. We're increasing class sizes. We're asking everyone to do more, and we're telling them how much they are appreciated, but we aren't showing them. As a board, I think we need to be asking for options. This is what the budget looks like with a step increase. This is what the budget looks like with an increase in pay for substitutes. This is what the budget looks like with both. Instead, we just have a budget. Molly Spearman reiterated the importance of subs when schools reopen, yet no one can remember the last time sub pay was increased. In addition, I talked about board-approved fees and how schools spend those fees. Since then, I've learned that the same issues exist with other fees that are collected. In more than one instance, cash was dispersed out of these pupil activity accounts. If I'm going to approve a fee, then I need to be able to tell someone that I'm confident that their fee for, well, just say instructional materials, actually went towards instructional materials. At this time, I can't do that. And if they were to send in a FOIA request for how fees were spent, I don't think they would even be happy with the answers that they got. So I would just like some options and some more details on fees and some other things.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Garris. Are there any other questions or comments, board? I think Ms. Green and I were talking during the break. Right now, we have our hands tied, and we really can't do anything till the General Assembly comes back in September. And the community is just really struggling. I know so many families that they've lost their jobs, they've lost their livelihoods, and I just feel really proud that at this point we have kept all of our staff and teachers employed. They've kept their benefits, they've kept their pay, and I was pleased that we could do that during this time. So we're just going to watch, and we're going to follow the guidance of the General Assembly and Governor McMaster, and we're just going to pray a lot because there's a lot going on in our community.
Ms. Smith, I would just like to add, my appreciation to Mr. Salters and his team for what I consider to be a very responsible budget in light of just, we're in the middle of some uncertainty. We don't know what the General Assembly is going to do as far as funding schools in September. Right now, we're under a continuing resolution, which is basically same as last year until they decide otherwise. A lot can happen between now and September, and I think that this budget represents a lot of belt tightening, but a lot of responsible planning, so that in the event that things are worse or considerably worse in the fall when the budget is passed, that we're in a position to be able to continue to provide the services that we need to provide to our students and keep our teachers' jobs secure. So thank you, Mr. Salters.
Okay, any other questions or comments, board? Hearing none, we'll take a vote. All in favor of the 2020-2021 general fund budget as presented by Mr. Salters and the finance team, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Jade is opposed.
Okay, so it's 6-1, and the motion carries, and we have a budget, and guess what? For all my school teacher friends, that means you get a paycheck. That's always a good thing. We have to keep that budget going. We're now going to move to 14.2, which is our second reading on policy BEC, executive session open meetings. I'm going to call on, let me get a motion on the floor in a second, and then I'll call on Ms. Hill. Do I have a motion to approve policy BEC, executive session open meetings, as presented with the changes?
Madam Chair, I move that the board approve policy BEC, executive sessions, open meetings as presented.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Green. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Anderson. Are there any questions or comments regarding these changes to this policy?
I have some questions. During first reading, there were 4 words that were changed and a sentence was added that allowed board members attending by Zoom to view the materials electronically. And there was no discussion from the board. I'm just curious, who added 2 additional paragraphs between the first meeting and this meeting?
I asked that those paragraphs be added, just because as we continue to navigate electronic dispersal of documents, documents that we view in executive session are confidential and they need to be maintained in a confidential setting. Those documents don't belong to the board members, they belong to the district. And so this is just an effort to make sure that the data and contract negotiations and legal advice and student and personnel information is protected in the best manner that we can.
Okay. Well, thank you. So we have some policies that are over 30 years old. And like you mentioned, this policy is in direct response to an email that I sent to you and Cindy when I mentioned that I had asked for some documents from a Zoom meeting that I did not have time to read because they were not provided in a timely manner and they were removed from the folder before I had a chance to finish. But as board members, we are to hold the district accountable. But it's hard to do that without a paper trail. And I asked board members from other districts, and they're allowed to keep information that's given to them in executive session. I just believe this policy shows a lack of trust between board members. And it's no different than when parents had their information taken from them after the committee meeting that discussed reopening. And for us to be in the midst of a pandemic, and instead of acting on updates from recommended policy from the School Boards Association, we'd rather focus our efforts on keeping information out of the hands of fellow board members. I just think we need to re-examine our priorities.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Garris. Are there any other questions or comments, board?
I do have one. I do struggle a little bit with the language, the additional language with will be collected by chair, his or her designee at the conclusion of executive session. I have a hard time reconciling how we can receive, say, a contract for purchase, for a property, and we may not receive that until 6 p.m. and then kind of be expected to vote on it very soon thereafter, or if not, if it's pushed later, at least not have the chance to review 30, 40, 50 pages worth of legal documentation that's awful difficult to try to do inside of an hour, in which we're also trying to cover employee recommendations and so on and so forth. And I think, moreover, I have more difficulty with the actual process of this policy development, because in my mind, this is the way in which we govern ourselves as the board. And so I would think we would board lead that, as opposed to an employee of the district bringing this to us. Now, if it's in a facilitatory manner, I mean, it's, I understand that. But I would anticipate that if we're going to adopt a policy in the way in which we govern ourselves, that we're going to lead that process. And it may not even have to be, a 7-member panel at one time, but moreover, like a little subcommittee or something like that reviews these policies. Grading policy, no. Okay, we have no business doing that. We're not educators. But when it comes to things where we govern ourselves as a board, to me, that should be more board-led. So at this point, I would just make a motion to table this for further consideration.
And I don't know if I can second, but I agree with you, Dr. Guyton, because this language addition was at my request, but this is the first time that really it's been under discussion. So I think it would be appropriate to give everybody a chance to marinate on it and mull it over. And there's not really any urgency in this, sure. But I wanted to get this in it so that we, like you said, so that we can discuss it and consider, the practical application. Because as Ms. Garris said, I think at any point in time, any documents that we review in executive session, that a board member can come to the district office and sit and review them at any point in time. I just think that we need to be careful about how they documents are leave the building. And you're right, the board members should be trusted, and I think can be trusted. But we just need to make sure that we have some procedures in place, but we can't really create procedures for that if there's not a policy that governs those procedures. And so the policy needs to come first. And so that's why I put this language here, and then we can kind of parse it and figure it out. So I would second your motion to table.
Okay. But I also disagree with coming to the district office to view materials. I mean, there's no reason that those can't be made available electronically. And in here you say they'll be marked confidential, and you say they can't be duplicated, recorded, photographed, videoed. So, I mean, you're covering all of that. It's kind of like we have to come here and be babysat by the district to make sure that we're not doing something we're not supposed to be doing, when actually it's the other way around. Like, we are here to hold them accountable. They don't hold us accountable.
But by law, there are privacy restrictions.
And I totally get that, but this does not cover any of that. We have FOIA covered all of that. We have other policies covering that. But to keep documents out of hands of fellow board members, to me, is just, it's almost unbelievable, but not really.
I think we have a motion on the floor and a second to pin this. So at this point, since we have not voted, let's go ahead and take a vote on pending this until our main July meeting. And since this was brought forward by the board, this was not brought forward by administration. This was brought forward by the board, and this is about self-governance. So at this point, I have a motion from Dr. Guyton and a second from Ms. Green to pin this until our July meeting. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, any opposed? Okay, we will pin this, and so we will not take a vote on the motion since we have pinned it. So it will move. So Ms. Holliday, if you'll make sure this goes on the main July meeting. Okay, at this time, we're going to go to 14.3, which is the Minority Business Enterprise Plan. And Mr. Salters will be chiming in on this. So do I hear a motion to approve the Minority Business Enterprise Plan for fiscal year 2020-2021 as recommended by administration?
Madam Chair, I move the board approve the Minority Business Enterprise Plan for fiscal year 2020-2021 as recommended by the administration.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Anderson. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Powers. At this time, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Salters for any comments, and then we'll open it up for questions. Mr. Salters?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members of the board, just confirming you can hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. This is our minority business enterprise plan that we bring to the board each year at this time. And this plan is part of our our procurement process, and the plan sets out a goal for the district and the guidelines associated with achieving that goal related to minority business. The goal for the district is that 1/2 of 1% of the total budget expended by the district from procurement of supplies, services, and construction may be directed towards minority vendors, and that is of the what we call controllable dollars in our budget. And so that dollar goal, as an example, for the 2019-20 school year was approximately $460,000. And that dollar amount will be determined through a formula provided by the state. It usually happens later in the fall of the year after the budget's loaded and everything's finalized, and the state releases that formula, and we apply that to our budget to determine that goal. And so our process in procurement related to minority business, we have a MBE website that we go to when we have solicitations that we release for the district that the state maintains, and we identify any vendors that are participating that would match up with that particular solicitation and send them that information for bidding purposes to try to help achieve this goal. One thing that we have always done in the district is we have committed to the taxpayer that we're not going to pay more for goods and services just to meet a goal. We're always going to, in our bids, take the cheapest price available to save taxpayer dollars. And so that's why there are years, actually more years than not, where we haven't achieved this goal, because oftentimes the open market bears a better price. But we do set this every year, and this motion is that action. So I'll happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Are there any questions or comments for Mr. Salters? Hearing none, we'll take a vote. All in favor of the Minority Business Enterprise Plan for fiscal year 2020-2021, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries, and it is unanimous. We're now going to go to 14.4, which on the agenda is changes to 2020-2021 academic calendar. Dr. Talley was going to present that, and at this time, Board, we will not take action on this agenda item because of some changes recommended by the Accelerate Ed, but I am going to ask Dr. Talley if she'll comment on this, just so we'll know exactly where we are on this. It's not on.
Light's on. There we go. Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the board, for the opportunity to explain why I would like to table this action item regarding revisions to the 2021 academic school calendar. As you know, Superintendent Spearman has suggested that there be funding allowed for 5 additional days for teachers in grades K4 through 8. She's calling those days, the recommendations of the Accelerated Task Force is, those days are LEAP days, which stand for learning, assessing, remediation, and
Analyze, I think.
Analyzing, and what's the P?
Planning?
Planning, thank you. So the decision has not been made regarding funding for those days. So we're not guaranteed that we'd be given funding for those days. In addition to that, school districts certainly can extend those days to grades, to high school, if they have the funding. It's a very large number, as you know, to pay for those 5 extra days. So we would like to wait until we have some more finality on the addition to the 5 days. We would like, though, to go ahead and post the calendar as it is written so that our parents and our community know that right now our intention is to start school the first day for students on August the 18th. Families need to know that. They have travel plans made and other plans made. So that will be posted back on our website so that families can do that. And then we can, once we have more information, we can certainly make changes to the calendar. Be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Well, I would like to remind everyone that just today, we have called a special call board meeting on July 2nd because that will follow the recommendation from Superintendent Spearman. At 8 a.m., we will have a special call board meeting to finalize the calendar, hopefully.
That's right.
Things are changing so quickly, so there will be a quick meeting that morning to hopefully honor that. So thank you, Dr. Talley.
Thank
Any
you.
questions or comments for Dr. Talley?
Is there any feedback on when the 5 days would be? Would they start the year earlier, or
Actually, they have, that's a great question. You have the flexibility, Dr. Powers, to use those days anytime in the first semester. They have to be used before December, the end of December. They encourage you to use them earlier than later, and they also ask you to consider the needs in your community.
And
But there's flexibility on the 5 days.
and that requirement will be discordant from the legislature determining the funding for those days or not? Or it'll be coordinated, or yet to be determined?
Yet to be determined, yes, sir. I will point out to you, though, we've worked really hard to, the changes that we will probably recommend if the funding does go through is not disruptive to this calendar. This is a very good calendar. We were asked last year to build a calendar that included lots of breaks at that time because we were talking about flu. And Nurse Amy told us that families need a long weekend to recover from that. So it's a good calendar. We have tried to space breaks in most every month. So it's also a national election year. So we'll have a break in November for that holiday. So again, we're trying to be nimble. As you know, things are changing every day. So, but we look forward to bringing changes to you soon.
And Dr. Talley, kind of following up on Dr. Powers' question, I know in the, and you may not know this yet, but in the accelerated recommendations, they were not very certain in their recommendations. They kind of recommended a little bit of everything, especially when it came to calendar. And there did seem to be a little bit of an emphasis on possibly delaying start until after Labor Day. And my question is, I mean, I think y'all usually do, and this may come later in the reopening presentation, but are we working to coordinate our calendar? I know we're not in lockstep, but coordinate generally with our neighboring school districts, because we have teachers that have students that go in other districts, and there's just a lot of need for some consistency within the Midlands area.
Yes.
And I mean, are you sensing that the other districts in the Midlands are sticking to their generally published previous calendars like we are?
Dr. Talley, if I could jump in on that question just a second, because there's some things that I know about this a little bit. Tomorrow, we'll be meeting with the Midland superintendents, and that's going to be on as part of one of our topics of discussion. So we're going to be talking about that tomorrow. We do try to do something along those lines because we have so many people that live here, work there, kids go to different districts, those kinds of things. But again, we're going to have to do what's best for our community. But if y'all don't mind, I'd really like to get to the next big thing, because that's going to be we're still kind of hypothetical on the calendar. But we've got some, with the plans next, we'll kind of start clarifying some of the needs of the calendar too, I think. But we are talking about that very thing tomorrow.
Great. But I have one question. Are we going to put this calendar back on the website now?
Yes. Current one.
Okay, I just know a bunch of people have been going to the website saying they can't find it. Okay, thank y'all.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Talley.
Thank you.
Do we need a motion to table this for later? Or no?
We're not
Okay.
taking action on it. Okay, at this time, we're going to go to reports, and this is for information only, and I think this is why most people are here tonight. So I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Little, and Dr. Little, if you'll take it away.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. So I must say this is going to be a unique superintendent's update because there is a lot of things that I think many superintendents, if you would have said a year ago, you're going to have to be tackling these types of issues, it would be quite the surprise, and as it has been. Before we get started tonight, I do want to say some words that have really framed our efforts is we wanted to be purposeful, we wanted to be strategic, and we wanted to be intentional about our work. And our goal, and when you look across the board, our goal is to maximize face-to-face time and have a strong instructional program for our students. And at the same time, it's a both and for us, and at the same time, have a safe and secure environment to minimize risk for our employees, our students, and our community at large. And so there's been lots of work about this effort. Two of those people are back here, but I think they would even admit that we have had, really right now, it'd be too long a list to count about people who've been working on this plan and who have been a part of the work that we're doing. But Dr. Smith and Dr. Phillips are going to present tonight about where we're going. But again, I want you to keep the words in mind: purposeful, strategic, and intentional. And that our goal is to maximize that face-to-face time while looking after the health and safety of our students, the adults in the building, and our community at large. So those are the big takeaways, the framing things that we've been working on. I would also say, I would be remiss to say, even that tonight we're calling this our plan, I think we're referring to it as our framework, with the knowledge and understanding that in the next month, the world could look differently. Look differently. Sorry, Melissa's gone already. I found out tonight, she and I both share the fact we both made a C in English 102. Just don't want to throw that out there to everybody. But the world could be a very different place in a month from now. And how that looks then at the beginning of school is still up in the air. But I am thankful for the people who worked on this, for the creative energy. We do have a number of those folks over there, and they may not want to raise their hand because they have to own some of this stuff. But I am thankful for their work, but it was really about a collective effort of bringing this together. And I think what you're going to see tonight are some solutions that really meet our community needs. So take it away, Dr. Smith.
So this evening I'll be presenting to you reentry schedule options for K-12 students here in Lexington County School District 1. To create these options, we convened a group of school administrators at each grade level, well, I should say grade band, from across the district to draft initial scheduling options for reentry. Members of individual divisions and departments across central services also supported our drafting team as we developed our plans and framework. Both the drafting team and central service administrators studied a number of reentry plans from across the country to inform our design. Once a first draft of schedules was produced, we asked for feedback from loads and loads of stakeholders across our district. I'm going to hand it over to Dr. Phillips for a couple of minutes to discuss that process.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. Oh, is this working? Did I do it? Okay. So we did not act, the task force did not act in isolation. We did seek feedback from a variety of sources. We gathered feedback from many of our stakeholders, including parents, students, the medical community, teachers, nurses. We did used a variety of instruments. We used a pulse survey from Hanover Research, which we sent out to all parents and asked them to have students do it as well. We did it the same survey for school and district level staff. And we got up to almost 4,000 parents, 189 student responses, over 1,500 school level staff, and 174 district level staff on that. We did a lessons learned survey to try to get information from our stakeholders about how things went during the closure with regard to the remote learning process. And we focused those surveys on established groups within the district, like the Teacher Leadership Council and the Support Staff Advisory and some Central Services folks. Beyond that, Josh? I did it. There we go. Okay. After that, we also conducted focus groups with parents, doctors, students, teachers, nurses, and support staffs to show them some of the proposed models, get their feedback on how those can be improved upon. We also conducted a thought exchange, and many of you may have participated in that. Sort of a different approach, less of a survey and more of a virtual town hall where people could express their thoughts and then rate the thoughts of others. And what that allowed us to do was get those thoughts that were most popular sort of floated up to the top. And we had a tremendous response to that. 8,600 or so parents or guardians and 2,400 staff. And in the parents alone, we had over 300,000 ratings of comments. So that was some interesting data as well. And what came out of all of this feedback were basically two differing views. So we have a group of folks who are very, very concerned about returning to a face-to-face reopening because of the safety of students and staff. And then on the other side, you have those who have a desire to return to school as normally as possible with the inclusion of some reasonable precautions. What we found, though, is that there are areas in which both of those groups agree. And this is where we sort of focused a lot of our efforts and where things aligned. So if we are remote, folks believe that new learning must take place. It must be structured learning. So there needs to be some schedule, some structure to that instruction. We need clear communication about our plans and about expectations for students, for staff, etc. Any schedule that's developed needs to be reasonable and needs to have flexibility and options. So parents need to have the option of a remote or virtual learning experience, or a hybrid experience, or a face-to-face experience. And then, of course, cleaning and hygiene and sanitization of all the buildings and equipment. They also agreed that we needed to take efforts to manage teacher workload because we're asking teachers to do a lot of different things now. Lowering class sizes to facilitate social distancing. Establishing clear expectations for staff, families, students, et cetera, in the environment that we're living in. There was a lot of concern about teacher attendance. So how are we going to deal with absences if a teacher has to go out and our sub's going to be readily available, those things that Mr. Stacy's office is working with. Teachers wanted to make sure they were going to have the support and time to prepare for whatever models we establish. And they wanted a quick development and communication of a plan. So these are those areas where that we had common ground, where those sort of two differing groups of folks said, whatever we do, we got to do these things. So I'm going to turn it back over to Natalie because she did the lion's share of the work with the task force here, and let her talk to you about those models.
So based on the feedback from our stakeholder groups, we have developed reentry plans, again, like I said, across grade bands. To begin with, we'll look at our elementary options. For students in kindergarten through grade 5, we're going to offer families, or we are suggesting that we offer families 2 options for reentry in the fall. That would be the family model and the home-based model. Guardians of students will have the opportunity to select which of these choices they would think is best for their family and their children this summer. We're going to present information about both tonight. And we'll begin with the family model first. So our goal in the family model was twofold. We wanted to protect students and staff members' health while also maximizing instructional time and support, as Dr. Little described in the beginning. In this model, instructional time is maximized with all students attending school each day during scheduled school hours. In addition, we believe that as our community continues to reopen and as parents and guardians return to work, that this model best supports the homeschool partnerships that we have been developing while also effectively addressing student growth academically and socially. The family model treats homerooms or homeroom classes like families, and as a part of that family, students will remain in one classroom throughout the school day, with the exception of recess and other outdoor instruction. Students are not required to practice social distancing or wearing face coverings while in that family model classroom. This means that related arts teachers and other support staff teachers will come to students' family model classrooms to conduct their course or to take students outside. It also means that visiting teachers like related arts teachers and support staff teachers will wear personal protective equipment like face masks during those class experiences. Students will enjoy recess opportunities with their classmates only, and schools will serve breakfast and lunch in the classroom setting. In the family model, students will have learning and social experiences listed on the screen. This includes, of course, English language arts, math, science, and social studies. They will also have multiple recess breaks and frequent movement breaks throughout the day, as well as opportunities for social and emotional learning. In addition, if a teacher team teaches across multiple sets of students, teachers will move between classrooms and students will remain in their homeroom class. For instance, this is how our immersion programs in elementary school would function. Again, our adult staff would be wearing PPE or personal protective equipment if they were to move classrooms. So as we were planning the family model option, we specifically wanted to address how support services would be given to children as they need. These services include special education, gifted and talented, school counseling, response to intervention, English as a second language, and other school-specific supports. We are suggesting that schools use both a push-in and a pull-out model to provide these services to children. In both of these, whether it's a push-in or a pull-out, our teachers will be wearing personal protective equipment. And I did want to kind of name some of what those models could look like. So if teachers are pushing into a family model classroom, they would be working with a small group while in the class with their homeroom teacher, and they would be wearing PPE at the time. You might also have a staff member come to a class and pull an individual student out to do individual conferring. Again, the staff would be wearing PPE. The staff might also pull a small group of children from the same homeroom class or family model classroom. Again, the staff would be wearing PPE. And finally, if needed, staff may pull children from multiple classrooms, but in cases of that, both the staff and students would be wearing personal protective equipment, and they would be practicing social distancing as much as possible. So in order to support this family model option, we also review the start and stop time for the school day. So typically in elementary schools in the past, school started around 7:40 a.m. in most sites and ended at 2:20 p.m. Please note that our suggested start and stop time for the coming school year will be different. We are suggesting that elementary schools start at 7:50 a.m. and end at 2 p.m. We believe this slightly shortened day will allow schools to stagger both entry into the building as well as dismissal from the building in the best way possible to keep children and staff safe. In order to help young children practice these procedures for social distancing and the staggered entry and dismissal, our team wanted to recommend that elementary students should transition back into school that first week in an incremental fashion. So what this means as a whole school, like in the whole school context, is that half of the student body would come on days 1 and 2. The second half of the school would come days 3 and 4, and then all children would be there on day 5. Each school would provide specifics to guardians regarding the start date for their specific children or family. So from a teacher's perspective, though, this means that half of his or her class would be there again on day 1 and 2, the other half there on days 3 and 4, with the full class there on day 5.
Is that just the first week or that's ongoing?
Just the first week. So student and staff safety was vitally important in our planning, and we believe it should be kept paramount as we continue to make decisions. So we wanted to make sure you understood that we were going to be using and creating guidance from the CDC and from DHEC, as well as our district's operations and human resources departments, to address instances when a student or staff member were to test positive for COVID-19. In these cases, though, instruction will not stop. We will continue to provide quality learning experiences for our children in a distance learning format during any time of quarantine. Because of that last statement, I want to make sure I explain to you the next thing. So distance learning Wednesdays. In our end-of-year work plan reviews with administrative teams and school leadership teams, they repeatedly mentioned how collaborative and resilient both our educators and students were during the spring closure. But the other kind of theme in the conversation has been how hard it has been for our teachers to brainstorm, design, and execute distance learning in such a tight turnaround. So to ensure that quality instruction for all children, both in the face-to-face and distance learning environment, our team believes it's critical to provide teachers with time to collaborate and time to plan engaging experiences for children around new learning. This is why we are advocating for elementary teachers to have distance learning days every other week. The distance learning Wednesdays ensure educators have time to collaborate, plan, and design learning experiences that support our children in becoming effective communicators, collaborators, creators, and critical thinkers. These Wednesdays will also give educators consistent access to professional learning that they need to develop technical and adaptive skills. And finally, distance learning Wednesdays will give them time to engage in parent conferences so that we can figure out the supports they need both in school and out of school. So as I mentioned at the beginning, there is also a home-based model. And in the home-based model, instruction will be provided virtually through a variety of formats with accountability measures in place for progress monitoring and academic growth. We will also be providing virtual support services and social emotional learning supports in a variety of formats such as telephone calls, emails, and virtual platform meetings like Zoom or Google Hangout. So for students in grades 6 through 12, we will offer 2 options for reentry in the fall: the AB hybrid schedule and a virtual instruction model. Guardians of students, again, will have the opportunity to select which of these schedules best fits their family and their children later this summer. We will present information about both, and we will start with the hybrid schedule. So in a hybrid schedule model, students will be assigned to either a cohort A group or a cohort B group to support social distancing. For students, this means that they will have 2 days of face-to-face instruction and 3 days of virtual learning each week. In the face-to-face instructions, teachers will still be using our district's instructional model, which we call the student engagement model. On those face-to-face days, they will still have mini lessons, they still will have small group differentiated instruction, and they still will engage in individual conferring. On virtual days, educators will use structures that empower children to be leaders of their own learning. Content and learning on virtual days will be a continuation of what they had done in the face-to-face environment previously. To support student growth, schools will schedule virtual opportunities for students to work with their teachers in real time to address academic and social needs. In addition, teachers will design and schedule virtual peer collaboration opportunities for students to continue their work in a group setting. So at the middle level, the AB hybrid schedule will have 7 periods each day when students are in a face-to-face group. Please note that the start and stop time for middle school has been adjusted for the 2021 school year as well. Currently, our middle schools start, like this year, our middle schools started at 8:05 typically and ended around 3:30. For next year, we are recommending that middle schools start at 9 a.m. and end at 4:15 p.m. From the student perspective, the AB hybrid schedule provides them with a well-rounded middle school experience. Each student has a rich course of study that includes 4 core classes, 2 exploratory classes, and 1 advocacy period. To aid in the social distancing aspects, the team built in 10-minute transition times between classes and is recommending staggered class changes. This time period presents schools with the opportunity to design the safest transition plan possible at each grade band. All periods in this schedule will be 55 minutes, with the exception of period 2, which was made longer for non-instructional class tasks like ordering lunch. From the teacher perspective, core teachers will teach 4 classes and have 2 dedicated periods, 1 for planning and 1 for virtual support of students. Exploratory teachers will have 5 classes and provide support to their virtual day cohort when they are not with students in a face-to-face setting. Specialized programs and supports, again in this model, will be still possible. Students who receive response to intervention, English as a second language, or special education supports will still have access to these services on face-to-face and virtual days. Students who need this added layer of intervention may attend pull-out services for special ed, response to intervention, or ESOL in lieu of one of their exploratory classes, or they may be eligible for additional supports. This allows all children to have at least 1 exploratory class. Furthermore, students will experience differentiation through accelerated coursework like they always have, and immersion students will continue to take a language and passport class under this model. Lastly, the advocacy period and lunch would be combined. This allows for more face-to-face instructional time when students are in the building, while providing social and emotional support, as well as time for children to decompress with their peers in the advocacy setting. So for middle school, secondary teachers as a whole, we are recommending virtual learning Wednesdays. Like the elementary model plan, these same teachers need time to provide virtual student supports, to collaborate and plan engaging student experiences, and to engage in rich professional learning. For secondary teachers in particular, we felt like this was important because they are changing from a primarily face-to-face instructional model to one that is hybrid. These Wednesdays would occur each week. We believe that these virtual learning Wednesdays ensure educators have the quality time they need to collaborate with one another to design hybrid learning experiences and supports that empower children to be effective communicators, collaborators, creators, and critical thinkers. In addition, these Wednesdays give educators consistent access to the professional learning they will need to develop the technical and adaptive skills for hybrid and virtual learning. So in order to support all students and families in a hybrid environment as described, our team is recommending that students have multiple contacts from school staff during the 3 virtual days, easing parents' concern if their child is at home. Each day, teachers will have a dedicated period where they will be available for virtual office hours. This allows educators to provide instructional support and services to a cohort of students attending school that day in a virtual setting. In addition, students who need additional interventions will be given the supplemental support in the virtual setting, and school counselors and advocacy teachers may meet with children through virtual meetings. Students with siblings in the same school or in the same attendance area, including children in blended families, will be placed in the same cohort to ease childcare, transportation, and scheduling concerns. Lastly, we are investigating community partnerships that may provide relief for parents regarding childcare concerns. So before we dig into the student perspective of the high school schedule, I wanted you to note again the schedule time change for next year. This past year, our high schools typically started school around 8:20 a.m. and they would end around 3:30 p.m. For the 2020-21 school year, the draft team recommends that high schools start at 9 a.m. and end at 3:50 p.m. Additionally, the high school schedule has a similar structure to the middle school in that there are 2 cohorts or groups in which students could be scheduled. In the AB hybrid schedule for high school, students will typically take around 6 to 8 credits over the course of the year, depending on graduation requirements. Students who travel to LTC or a center of advanced study, we're advising that they stay at those schools for the entire day if possible. We're also advising that course offerings remain the same with the addition of some 100% virtual options. And these course offerings will still include international baccalaureate, advanced placement, and dual enrollment options that we have always had. To support families in transitioning to this model, again, we will ensure that siblings and individuals in the same household will be scheduled in the same cohort. This includes siblings that may go to a feeder middle school. So from the teacher perspective, in a high school, teachers would teach around 60 to 90 students per semester. Each group that they see in the face-to-face sitting would have around 10 to 16 students physically in the classroom. On Wednesdays, all students, again, would be virtual like in the middle school, and teachers would host virtual office hours and support sessions on those Wednesdays. In addition, they would have time for collaborative planning and professional learning on virtual platforms. On Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday, teachers will have 75 minutes dedicated for virtual office hours for planning and virtual support of students. Some teachers may teach 100% virtually in this model, depending on the course offering and the number of student requests that we have for that. Something that I was very excited about and wanted to make sure was shared is that under this schedule, our children will still have access to a world-class career and technology education experience at Lexington Technology Center. The goal of this coursework will continue to be hands-on learning with real-life application. So the LTC will leverage a model that maximizes in-person hands-on learning so that students acquire the career-specific skills they need alongside mastering course content. Students who select to take courses at LTC will still have that option to earn career credits or certifications. Because some of these certifications are governed by outside agencies, the LTC will use the requirements of the certification to determine the schedule for that particular course. To support students in their endeavors to take courses at Lexington Technology Center, our draft team is proposing that core classes be offered to LTC for traveling students. Students that attend Lexington High School would continue to take their core classes at their home school. As a result of this change, the LTC will manage schedule conflicts and needs on a case-by-case basis should students have specialized coursework they need to complete for graduation. In addition, transportation will be provided to the LTC. However, we are recommending that the routes between instructional blocks be limited or eliminated when possible. Students will still have the option to drive or to be dropped off and picked up as they always have in the past. So in closing around the AB hybrid schedule, I just wanted to highlight 2 things. First, the schedule addresses safety. It maximizes exposure by creating half occupancy in the building and classes each day. And it minimizes transitions and allows ample time for students to transition between classes. Additionally, staff may have atypical duties, which includes bathroom and hallway supervision, behavior coaching, and extra support to students as needed. As with the other models presented tonight, the district will work with local medical professionals, the CDC, and DHEC to determine best safety protocols for entering, transitioning, and exiting the school, as well as the use of personal protective equipment. Second, the plan intentionally addresses students' need for social and emotional support. Students are provided a social and emotional support class each day that they are on campus through an advocacy period. In addition, teachers of this advocacy period will also provide a regular point of contact for families regarding check-ins and questions. So the virtual instruction option for families is the second opportunity or choice that a family could make. In the 100% virtual option, instruction will be provided through a variety of formats with accountability measures in place to ensure progress monitoring and student growth. Virtual support services and social emotional learning support will also be provided through a variety of formats like telephone calls, emails, and virtual platform meetings like Zoom and Google Hangout. So before I ended tonight, I would be remiss not to thank my team that I worked with over the past couple of weeks to develop these schedules. I want to thank the principals, assistant principals, and school staff listed here that served as our drafting team for the schedule options. I'm going to ask them to stand up if they'd like to, so that we can give them a round of applause for all of the hard work that they did. And when I say hours, it was hours and hours of study on their own, the different entry plans, as well as the work that I kind of harangued them to do when we met through Zoom and other meetings. So they did an amazing job in taking this feedback from stakeholder groups to ensure that our options met the needs of our children, staff, and families. Specifically, the drafting team correlated the stakeholder feedback with our options. By intentionally using this feedback to clarify and revise our plans, we are confident that school schedule options that we presented to you tonight ensure the safety and security of our students and staff, maximize learning experiences for children, and provide social and emotional supports that all students need while staying true to our mission and vision as a district. We could not have refined and produced these options without the support and work of the professionals listed here. We are definitely stronger together. So, at this time, if you have questions, I'd be glad to help.
I just want to say thank you. I know a lot of work went into that. Wow, I'm not even sure what questions I have. But I do know that, I know I will be bombarded with questions probably as soon as I leave here. I have for the last couple of weeks and all the way up until when I pull in the parking lot. Who do people call or email that would actually have some answers for them?
So we are developing a website that will go live right after this meeting with the options and choices. And on that website, they will list the people that they need to contact should they have questions. So it'll all be on that website that'll be connected to the lexington1.net site.
Okay, thank y'all.
And you may already have this plan for that website, but I think it would be very helpful to, a little bit like when we have like a building plan or a property purchase, maybe start compiling the FAQs.
Yes.
And continually update those, that way, because otherwise you'll get 9 million of the same question.
Right.
And like Ms. Garris, this is what I've been asked about for the last 6 weeks. And I mean, I can't imagine how many hours y'all spent on this, because you basically just, I've told people, I think they like put everything on the table and just pick pieces and parts and I mean, y'all really crafted an entirely new school model. And so thank you very much for the time that you put into this. Thank you.
One note, just that, just to be clear about what our intention is for the year. As the reality changes, so will this plan also be flexible. So I think our number one goal and our number one hope is that we're going back to school with no social distancing issues whatsoever. I mean, I think that is certainly our hope. And perhaps, you know, if treatment or a vaccine or whatever else is generated this year, maybe that's a possibility. But what we are really looking at is this to be, as Dr. Talley said earlier, a nimble plan. So if the reality changes, and let's say it maybe doesn't change for the good, then maybe we are going to be much better prepared this year to engage in a virtual or distance learning environment. And our commitment to our community is that the learning that you experienced in the fourth quarter of last year is not the same type of learning that you're going to experience distance-wise or virtually this year. Number one, we've invested heavily in time for our teachers to prepare, and I cannot tell you how important that is. We have to give our teachers time to think through this. I have told people that next year, every teacher in our district is a first-year teacher because they're doing things next year they've never done before, and we're going to have to respect that and provide these incredible professionals with the time they need to be successful. At the same time, we have to continue again to be nimble, and we have to ensure that if we are to go to a virtual learning environment for any length of time, say you have to shut down a school for 2 to 5 days, say there's a quarantine or something along those lines, or the second wave and we have a much larger issue in the fall than we do today, any of those issues, we are going to be better prepared to switch to those virtual and distance learning environments. And again, last year our goal was to survive the fourth quarter. We were dealing with something we had never dealt with before. We had 72 hours to prepare. This year it's about thriving. This year it's about creating dynamic learning experiences. And this year it's about our students and our teachers finding incredible amounts of success and advancing. It's not just about let's hold what we've got and let's make it through the end of the year because we know we're dealing with all these things. Now it's about how do we best support our students as it moves forward, because we could be in this model. I mean, we have 2 doctors here. We could be in this model 12 months. We could be in this model 18 months, 24 months, 6 months, whatever it may look like. But again, our goal is
6.
What's that?
I vote 6.
Yeah, me too. I vote 6 too. But just knowing that there's a lot of different ways this thing could go, and we need to be prepared for any of them. And I think our model does that, and we're going to have to switch back and forth. We may have to switch back and forth in those kinds of things. But the last thing I want to say as to what Dr. Smith talked about and stressed throughout our thing, we will be working to create the absolute best way to minimize exposure to our teachers, our staff, and our students, and how that works, and who needs to be in PPE and who doesn't. At this moment, we don't necessarily believe that our students in the classroom will be wearing masks. I know that's a hot topic, and I wanted to announce that. I don't believe that's going to be in our model, but there may be some use of PPE when we talk about transition and moving throughout the building and those kinds of things. But so we're trying to create this opportunity for our young people and our teachers, and the adults in our building, that everyone can be safe, but that we can also provide a dynamic learning environment so that they can be successful.
I think from a medical perspective, we just have to acknowledge we don't know. I wish I could sit here and tell you we know what the future looks like and what this viral infection is going to do. We don't. We're better than we were 3 months ago. We'll be better 3 months from now. But we don't know. What I do know is that there's probably not a person in this room who has not cried over the past 3 months. There's probably not a person watching this right now who has not cried. A parent who has been a foster parent, a grandparent who has been cast into a role of teacher, a teacher who has been cast into a role of completely figuring out their job and how to do it. And if you don't know that teaching is a calling, I'm here to tell you it is, because I have had several sitting on my front porch crying because they can't see their kids. So it's very real. On the flip side, we see the kids cry. They come through my office, and no more do they say, I don't want to go to school. They say, how can I go to school? I don't care what I have to wear. I will go to school. We didn't know how this thing was going to start with coronavirus. We didn't know if we're dealing with the flu or if we're dealing with Ebola. We needed time to determine that. We got a little better handle. In-office testing will make a huge difference. Vaccination will make a tremendous difference. And both of those are obviously in the pipeline. I think this plan makes the best of a bad situation at the end of the day. This is, from a medical perspective, it acknowledges the fact that you are not going to get a K through 5 to socially distance or wear a mask. You will not. Trust me, I see plenty of them all day. It will not happen. But it also acknowledges that there is a mental wellness side to the social experience a child has. And that starts very early, but it's most important 6th grade and up. And so I think just by allowing the face-to-face interaction as much as we can, I'd love to see more days. But, you know, obviously there are so many time constraints and constrictions and everything else that have to go into play, and you have to honor the fact that teachers have to have time to prepare. And so I think this plan is the best of the bad situation. It's aggressive while conservative at the same time. And so appreciate the work all of you have done, and certainly look forward to August 18th.
I was going to ask one more question. So I think for the first time that I can recall, it looks like our middle schools and high schools, their schedules will be synced up. Will that open the door for, say, like for families that choose 100% virtual instruction, that there could be students from River Bluff and Lexington and Gilbert with the same teacher? I mean, it seems like you'll be able to consolidate some resources with this, since everybody's got the same, basically, block schedule. Is that part of your conversations?
So yes, we are developing plans in terms of what a virtual academy would look like should families choose to go 100% virtual. And those FTE allotments are really going to depend on the number of requests that we have in those sections. So high school in particular is a challenge because there are so many options that children can choose in terms of scheduling. But our team is, our scheduling team and the IT department are fantastic, and we're working through ways to make that happen for kids.
Also note, we have you may have said this earlier, but we have a survey going out by the end of this week where we will be asking families if they are interested in the 100% virtual option. And so we're going to be collecting that data as soon as we can, and being able to turn that around then into the planning of what that ultimately looks like. But to your point, it's possible that you would have students from across the district in one virtual classroom with the particular teacher.
For the survey, and I know the survey is just gauging interest, but once a family chooses virtual, they're virtual through the school year, right? They can't.
Well, that was some of our initial conversations, but I think it really depends on the number of families who are interested in a virtual option, and I think it also depended upon what happens. Today, the breaking news today was that Dr. Fauci said he's cautiously optimistic that a vaccine will be developed in early 2021. So if something like that were to happen, we would need to change gears if our reality changes. So I don't want to sit here and tell you that it would not be for the year, and perhaps you need to plan for it to be for the year, and think about it that way. But we also want to understand that we could have any number of families who are infected by this, and we're trying to be as flexible as we can.
So I have a question. Will the teachers be working from school or home on virtual learning days?
They'll be working from school on virtual learning days.
Okay. Are we going to be taking temperature of the kids coming into school?
That's part of the strategies we have not yet identified. That's where we're talking about transition periods and the safety procedures associated with those transition periods.
Okay. And so have you gotten as far as the buses and at what % capacity they'll be operating?
So DHEC has provided us feedback on that. That's why one of the things is you notice that the middle school and high school, their days are delayed, is because the elementary schedules, they can only run at 50% capacity. And so we're trying to make accommodations for the amount of time it will take to run morning buses, because you may have multiple elementary school routes because you're only running your buses at 50%. And then you've got to make sure you have time for the high school and the middle school students to also do what they need to do on the buses. So one of the really great things is about research around the adolescent brain indicates that they need to start school later, and so high schools have really always been slow to adjust to that. We've always done okay with it, sometime around mid 8 p.m. or something, or 8 a.m., but they used to start high schools at 7:30. And so having a 9 a.m. schedule actually works better for the teenage brain. And so we think actually that model will improve quite a bit, despite the reason why we got there. But yeah, we're trying to make accommodations for buses, trying to make accommodations for how long it's going to take kids to get to school. And so we're still finalizing those plans, but those were some of the acknowledgments. We acknowledge that it's going to take us longer to get elementary school students to school. So therefore, we're delaying middle school and high school days.
Okay, thank you.
Consideration for dual enrollment, what does that look like?
Well, our plan for dual enrollment is business as usual.
Okay.
We're going to certainly work with Palmetto College, USC Sumter under the umbrella of the Palmetto College, and work with them about how we can do dual enrollment. Dr. Smith, do you have anything to add about dual enrollment?
So right now, what we're working on is how do we schedule that in the context of the models that we presented tonight. But all the information that we have right now indicates that students will still have access to every class they've always had access to.
And as somebody who's looking to have a child go to college, I'm very excited about that fact. Just saying.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Smith. Thank you, Shane.
Again, I do want to reiterate, as of now, I believe we have our information will be going out. If you go to the lexington1.net website, we have a banner across the board there, but we'll be sending out that, there's what you saw tonight will be there. And then as soon as possible, the presentation by Dr. Smith and Dr. Phillips will also be up and available. So there's going to be a ton of information there, as well as a link for you to ask questions. So lots of miles to go before we sleep, but we're very excited about that. And as part of our work today, and Mr. Moody, I'd like to apologize that you're having to follow that. Oh, I'm completely off. I'm completely off. Thank you, Mr. Caldwell. We do have some things to add about the reentry plan as it relates to student services, and I totally just blew off Mr. Caldwell, and I would like to apologize.
And then leave when I start. So a part of the reentry plan, of course, includes athletics, and I will tell you, as you look at that first slide, you'll see the word reentry is one word. Mary Beth Hill schooled me today that reentry is no longer hyphenated. I guess we've used it so often in our vernacular now that it's become one word. But I do want to talk very briefly about our athletic reentry plan that actually has already begun. There we go. And I want to start with a foundational statement. I borrowed some of this language from the High School League, and I think Lexington 1 adheres to that also, and that is that the league and the school district believes that it is essential to the physical and mental well-being of students to return to physical activity and athletic competition. To kind of frame that, to give you an idea of how involved our students are, we have approximately, or at the end of the 1920 school year, we had about 7,800 students in grades 9 through 12. Of those 7,800, about 3,500 of those students participated in an athletic activity. That's like 45% of the high school students participated in some athletic opportunity. So when we shut it down in the spring, of course, we didn't shut down all 3,500 by shutting down the spring activities, but almost half of our students are currently engaged. So this has a huge impact on our students that we had to end the year without athletics and the prospect of not being able to have athletics at the beginning of the year. I will tell you that question is still under consideration. We're not really sure what athletic competition is going to look like, if it's going to look like anything in the fall. But we have begun the reentry plan, and I wanted to share that with you briefly tonight. Again, as Natalie, Dr. Smith mentioned several times, the word safety. Well, safety first, of course, is the overarching goal of this reentry plan. to keep our student athletes, our coaches, our trainers, and any other staff members involved. Safety comes before anything else. Back in late April, early May, David Bennett began working with our high school athletic directors and trainers. And let me say this, anybody who knows me knows that I've made a career out of being surrounded or being able to surround myself with people who are much smarter than me. That has never been more evident than through this process, because we've had the work of Coach Bennett, the high school athletic directors, high school administrators, the trainers, Amy Wood, who is absolutely a phenomenal resource, Matt McCormick and Clark Cooper in our office have done the heavy lifting on this plan. So I want you to know that first and foremost. Without those folks' foresight and intelligence and expertise, we probably would not have this plan in place. But at any rate, in anticipation that the high school league would have some plan, we began planning ahead of that. And in late May, the high school league did submit and disseminate to the districts a 3-phase plan to return to athletics in the fall. That really didn't tell us what to do. It kind of guided our thinking, because we already were, we already had a plan in place, and so we were glad to see that what we had developed was kind of in line with what the high school league said. So from that point, we continued to get feedback from the athletic directors, the trainers, the school and district administrators, and phase 1 of a 3-phase entry plan actually began last Monday, June 15th. Now, within that plan of 3 phases, we have phases within phase 1. And week 1, which was last week, we invited the fall sport athletes back on campus. That's football, volleyball, cross country, those type. And I want to tell you that, and of course, in week 2, that'll be the winter sport athletes. Week 2 started yesterday, so that's mainly basketball and wrestling. And then week 3, which will start next week, will be the spring sports, baseball, softball, golf, those type things. That's not to imply that phase 1 will be over in 3 weeks, but we wanted to be slow and deliberate in reacclimating the kids back onto campus. The coaches are emphasizing strength and conditioning workouts over skill development. One thing that we have to realize and accept is that students probably deconditioned over the break. And so we have to, the weather last week was pretty kind to us and kind to the athletes. This week, not so much. So we have to be sure that we go slow and steady, and as we reacclimate those students into the strength and conditioning workouts. And I also want to stress that participation of the athletes and participation of the coaches is completely voluntary. If they, for some reason, for any reason at all, feel like it's not in their best interest to participate at this time, they're not going to be made to do that, and there's no penalty, no negative consequence for that. We have had a few athletes that have decided it is not in their best interest. To my knowledge, Coach Bennett, I don't think we've had any adults at this point that have chosen not to participate. But if for some reason they chose to, that is certainly their choice. So again, this is completely voluntary. Some of the health and safety measures that we are taking as the students arrive on campus each day, there will be temperature checks and health screenings that are performed daily. So the way that works, the trainers screen themselves and the coaches, and then the coaches screen the players each day. And the screening involves a temperature check, and it also involves a series of questions. And if they have a temperature of over 100 or more, or they answer yes to some of the questions, then we have a process in place. If they have a temperature of 100 or more, we'll sit them down for 10 minutes, check it again. If it's lower than 100, they're able to participate. If not, then they have to call home or go home for that day. The students are masked when they're not involved in an activity, which basically means they're masked when they arrive to campus, and they're masked when they leave campus. But when they're there doing the physical activity, they're certainly not going to be masked. Coaches, however, should be masked at all times. We are maintaining 6 feet of distance between the participants and 12 feet of distance when working out. So that becomes very challenging. And as our numbers grow this week and next week, that becomes even more challenging because we have a limited amount of space with which to work with all of these athletes. The weight equipment can be used, and when it says clean between each group, I want to stress that the students can go into the weight room. Again, they are 12 feet apart, but they're not sharing equipment. So if they're working with kettlebells or they're working with dumbbells, they will work with those by themselves. And when that group of 10 leaves and the next group comes in, but in between that transition, all of that will be sanitized. So they can't share any of the weight equipment. There's no more than 10 people allowed in any activity in any group, and that's 10 people including the coaches. So athletes and coaches, no more than 10 in a group. The groups stay together, kind of like the family model. Those groups stay together during the entire practice, and they're only allowed in one area at a time. And this probably was the most challenging because we can only have 10 people on a football field. Now, in my mind, when I first heard that, well, we'll take a fence, Coach Bennett, and we'll put it down the 50-yard line, and we can turn one football field into two. And the high school league was very clear, no, you won't. So 10 people on any facility at one time. So in one gym, in one weight room, on one football field. So again, that's a challenge, and it's getting more challenging as we have more students come onto campus. The first 10 weeks, the first 10 days of the practices, and we are approaching day 10. There's no balls, no other equipment being used. On day 11, a volleyball player can use a volleyball, but only she can use the volleyball herself and maybe do sets against a wall. Or a coach can throw batting practice to a batter with no catcher. And once that's over, those balls are sanitized, and then the next batter comes in, and they're not sharing bats, they're not sharing helmets, they're not sharing gloves. So it's a very articulated plan keeping the safety first. Locker rooms and offices are not being used during this phase 1. So the students and the coaches are expected to come to campus ready to participate. There's limited restroom access. Basically, it's every other stall that we're using to try to keep that social distancing. We're not allowing any personal contact, no huddles, no handshaking, no high-fiving, none of that's allowed. The participants bring their own water bottles. They can't share that. If they don't have water bottles, we have water available for them. So again, we're trying to cut out the commingling as much as possible. Just to give you an idea, the first week, which ended last Friday, we had approximately 964 athletes that participated. And that's in the fall sports. We're adding to that this week. I don't know what those numbers are, but it's certainly going to be well over 1,000. Again, week 2, which is the week we're in, started with the winter sports. And the middle schools were delayed. We wanted to be sure that we had, first of all, our processes down at the high school level to be sure that we were keeping the kids and the adults as safe as possible. And we wanted to be sure we had the proper equipment with the no contact thermometers and that sort of thing. So they will be starting next week or maybe the first week of July. And that is, I tried to be as brief as possible, but I will certainly answer any questions that you may have.
Mr. Caldwell.
Yes, sir.
Any thought being given to the arts, marching band, chorus, orchestra?
There is, and I think a group is working on that. That's kind of away from student services, but I did share with them what our reentry plan was, and I think they're using that as a template to start that.
Yes, sir, and I will be meeting with that planning team, I believe, tomorrow. We have the fine arts group coming in tomorrow. As you know, having a band kid in the family, this has been quite the conversational piece at the house, and we're trying to figure out how best to do that. One of the great challenges of marching band and really chorus as well is that when you are playing that musical instrument, you are using your breath, you're using, I don't want to gross out the room, but you're using a lot of
spit,
bodily fluids to play that musical instrument. And there's a lot of force behind that, and so there's a lot of concern about what that might look like. But we're going to do all we can to get band and chorus up and running and do so in the best possible situation. But there's also some coming out shortly. There will be some, I saw on the Accelerate Ed plan today, they've got other, people are rolling out other plans about that, but our plan, we're going to meet tomorrow with that and kind of find out where we are. But we need those kids playing. I mean, there's no substitute for practice. And, you'll see a student who goes, well, I mean, you saw this all the time. In August, their noise, it sounds like they're killing, an animal, and then by December, they're playing music. Well, they've done that because they've got significant practice time between August and December, and so we want to maintain that as much as we can.
So we're involving some folks in the band world and chorus and orchestra to help.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
They've been part of the planning process, all our band directors and all those folks.
That's a great quote. I don't take up a lot of time, but during World War II, somebody asked Winston Churchill, well, why don't we stop funding the arts, toward the war effort? And his answer was, well, what are we fighting for? So let's don't forget about the arts. I think
Absolutely.
they're as important as anything else we do.
Agreed.
Any other questions I can answer for you? Very good. Thank you.
Mr. Colwell, I'd like to, again, apologize for overlooking you, and I appreciate so much, Coach, and your work on making this happen. Thank you very much for all of your efforts. All right, next on our list is we have Mr. Will Moody. Again, Mr. Moody, I apologize for you having to follow such a distinguished and panel of educators ahead of you, but I know you will represent yourself and Gilbert Elementary School well. But if you'll recall, last board meeting, we had Centerville Elementary School present the blue and orange of Centerville Elementary School. And today, Mr. Moody would like to talk about changes at Gilbert Elementary School and how that's going to look. Mr. Moody.
Thank you, Dr. Little. And the reentry plan is a tough act to follow, so I'll do my best here. And I was thinking on the way over here, I have the unique distinction of being the last principal of Gilbert Primary School and the first principal of the new Gilbert Elementary School. So that's exciting. And I'm going to tell you about some of the changes on the horizon for our school. This is the architect's rendering of what the front of our school will look like when the renovations are complete. And we're excited the new signage and some architectural elements there will make it more obvious where the front of our school is and help us welcome visitors when they come in. And our improvements are well underway. They jumped on the school and the campus the minute teachers were gone for the summer. The most visible and obvious changes will be a reconfigured car line in front and a bus lane in the back, which helps give us a more efficient flow of traffic on the campus while keeping everybody safe. But we've got lots of improvements, and some of these are already complete, and we're excited. I do want to point out that we worked with members of our special education team to select new playground equipment that is inclusive and accessible to students with disabilities. So we're very excited to make our main playground accessible to all children. A few fast facts here. We will continue to serve 3-year-olds through 5th grade, and we will continue to be a Title I school. We'll have about 816 students, which is a little smaller than what we were as Gilbert Primary, and we'll have about 117 staff members. That includes certified and support staff. Our school community, our PTO, our SIC, they're all very excited about our new logo that you can see here, and I want to talk to you a little bit about some of the elements in the logo. You can see we're committed to the red and black color scheme that's typical of Gilbert. We've added the block G in the middle, which we feel like strengthens our identity as a Gilbert community school, shows alignment with Gilbert Middle School and Gilbert High School. And the feather in the background is meant to show a connection to the Gilbert High School Indians and the GMS Warriors. So we're very excited about that. New brand for our school. You can see our mission there is to empower students by developing the whole child through academics and leadership. And our vision is growing, learning, leading together. And we believe that the word together captures what Gilbert is all about. Two major initiatives that we're excited about for 2020-2021, and I'm glad Mr. Oswald mentioned the arts, because arts integration or arts integrated instruction is something that I'm very passionate about, and we actually started this initiative this current school year, and we'll grow that this year. And also AVID. I worked at an AVID school previously, and I've seen that work with teachers and students. I'll be happy to give you more information about that if you'd like, but what's most important about both of these initiatives, they're both grounded in research-based best practices, but more importantly than that, they open up multiple pathways to success for every child. And we feel that both of these directly support the Lexington One mission and vision. And that's going to be some exciting things for you to come out and see. We hope you will. Like all Lexington One schools, we'll continue to provide world-class learning experiences, and I've listed a few of those here. You can see our arts integration initiative referenced again there, along with AVID across grade levels. We're excited to see our Spanish immersion program grow from kindergarten all the way through the 5th grade. And we'll continue with the strong social emotional instruction that we have currently at Gilbert Primary.
So this is year 6 of your immersion program? Is that what you're saying? Like 5th grade class will be the...
Well, currently we're only K through 2, so now we're adding grades 3, 4, and 5. Yes, sir. And then our major areas of focus for next school year, student engagement, and that's where AVID and arts integration, along with the workshop model and reading, writing, and math fall under. We'll focus on culture and community. We have a great community at Gilbert Primary and in the Gilbert community itself. But as we rebuild a school family with new staff members from Gilbert Elementary School and students that are coming back to us from Gilbert Elementary, that will be just a big focus. We want to continue to have that warm, welcoming, inclusive family environment that we have, and then the continuous improvement of our learning environment. And that's me. That's quick. We'd love for you to come visit next year and see all the changes. Any questions for me?
Nicely
right.
done, Mr. Moody. Thank you very
Thank you.
much. And Madam Chair, with Mr. Salters not here tonight, I think it'd be best if we we'll do an operations update at our July meeting, and we'll kind of capture all of that, especially with the lateness of the hour and him not being here, if that's okay. It's okay with him. I've already checked, and so that concludes my report.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Little, and thank you, Mr. Salters, for joining us virtually. Board 16.0 is their items for board information. 16.1 includes your monthly general fund financial report for May of 2020, your monthly general fund budget transfers for May of 2020, your monthly capital projects report for May of 2020, your monthly unauthorized procurements report for May of 2020, and your 2019-2020 fiscal year grants report. And I just want to thank everybody for sticking with us so long. This was we knew it was a big meeting. It's just a big year, so we appreciate y'all sticking with us. And you know, I know some people it's very nerve-wracking for them to come in person to contact us. I want to remind everyone again, we have our email addresses, our telephone numbers, our mailing addresses if you want to mail us a letter, all on the website. So please feel free to contact the board or Dr. Little, any of the senior leadership team. We welcome your feedback. And anyway, 17.0 is adjournment. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Do I have a second? Second. Thank you, Ms. Green. All in favor, please stand up. And thank you, everyone.